Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield alongside of Lyle Leon. Welcome back to the Back to 12 podcast. It is officially game week, Lyle. Football is back. We've got TCU and Coach Prime kicking it off on Saturday morning. But let's be real. We know why people are listening to this podcast. Contrary to popular belief, we are not talking about West Virginia due to the hoodie that Lyle is wearing yet again. We're going to talk about Texas Tech football as it is officially game week, as the Red Raiders will head up to, are we considering Wyoming the Pacific Northwest? I don't think so, right? Like it's kind of in that middle ground.
It's Alaska.
We're just going to say it's Alaska, even though it's further away. But hey, fine. That's geography 101. Lyle, that's why he went to West Virginia. Little known fact, he actually got his master's in geography. Don't fact check us. But we will talk about Texas Tech and Wyoming week one, give you the depth chart that Joey McGuire released yesterday. What kind of stands out for the Red Raiders going into week one against the Cowboys up in Laramie? And Lyle will give his wide receiver to watch for Texas Tech in 2023. And he did shout somebody out before we started saying, oh, man, the guy switched his number. Maybe that gives you a hint on that front. But Lyle, how you doing, my guy?
Oh man, doing good. And I have to tell the people, man, it's the only jacket I got. The first time I did wear it because, I support West V, but today it's just because I work with a lot of offensive linemen and defensive linemen as my coaches. So they believe 60 and below is normal. So like I said, I can't feel my face right now or any of my hands and feet. So that's why I got the jacket on today, man. But, blessed to be in your presence. And, I want to shout you out, brother. I know Skip gave you a holler and you turned him down to do the Back to 12 with me. So, man, it's good to get to do another podcast with my brother, man.
Yeah, and I love the weekend reference you just put in there subtly, and you probably didn't even realize it yourself. But I can't feel my face either. Shout out to The Weeknd, one of my favorite artists personally, except for the fact where it's like, I'm not going to tell you how to run your own, concert and whatnot and your tour, but please lower the ticket prices, my guy. I'm trying to, feed the dogs over here, literally. The husky and the wiener dog got to eat. But anyway, speaking of eating, the audience that pays attention to us, Lyle, they've been eating when it comes to helping us get to 8,600 subscribers. Wanted to give everybody a huge shout out. That is, hit that subscribe button. Not even hit that subscribe button. Smash the subscribe button. We've got over 500 new subscribers this month alone, and now football season is back. I think we can get to 10K, Lyle, because hear me out on this. I was looking at the analytics before we started the show. 73.5% of the people that watch our videos and listen to this very fine podcast, I might add, I'd venture to say it's one of the best out there when it comes to Texas Tech. I mean, I don't know about you, Lyle. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're the only former player and active coach giving insights to Texas Tech football. I could be wrong, and then there's me. But that's just the second half of the thing. Don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to the first half that I was talking about. Change them. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get down to like 50% of the people that watch these videos not being subscribed and help us get to 10K by the end of football season. Damn it, we're giving you all kinds of content all year long, whether that's game previews, analytics, three keys to the game, film breakdown, and everything in between. And again, there's nobody else like Lyle in the podcast scene when it comes to Texas Tech. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, Lyle, again, officially game week. We're going to talk about the depth chart that Joey McGuire released yesterday. What stood out most? The position battles headed into week one. You'll name your wide receiver that you're watching most in 2023 for Texas Tech. And Lyle, I'm going to give you one caveat. It can't be Jerron Bradley. That's too easy. We're gonna make this a little bit more difficult for you. And then at the very end of the podcast, we'll talk about some potential under the radar guys that I think could be breakout / standouts for the Red Raiders in 2023. All right, let's jump on here, Lyle. Let's get into this in terms of the depth chart for the Red Raiders. This was released yesterday on Texas Tech Plus. I believe they had a video discussing it. Joey McGuire met with Robert Giovanetti, and this is the two deep for the Texas Tech offense from left to right on the offensive line. We called it here on this channel. We've been talking about it all summer long. This was going to be the offensive line for the Red Raiders. So really no shock here, Lyle. But Monroe Mills at left tackle, Cole Spencer at left guard, Rusty Stats at center, Dennis Wilburn transitions from center last year to right guard. Then you've got Caleb Rogers at right tackle. Now, at the wide receiver position, we'll start at the X and move all the way over to the Z. You've got Loic Fungi, and he's a guy that I am super excited about this year, but maybe a guy we'll talk about a little later, question mark. And Dre McCray is the starting H wide receiver. Then you've got Miles Price at Y and Jerron Bradley at the Z. Obviously, at the quarterback position and the running back position, you've got Tyler Shuck as QB1 and now Taj Brooks as the lead running back for the Red Raiders. When it comes to the tight end position, though, Lyle, this is where things got a little interesting to me. And you have Mason Tharp or Baylor Cupp. And the tight end position is one of those ones that's really deep, in my opinion, with these four guys. I actually like Jaden York quite a bit. But it's interesting to see the or next to Baylor Cupp when it comes to Mason Tharp for the sheer fact that Mason Tharp is coming back from injury. But when you look at what Joey McGuire has said about Mason Tharp, he went on to say this yesterday during the release of this depth chart for Texas Tech. McGuire said, probably the best guy, best camp guy on our team as far as growth. He's just been amazing. I've coached tight ends at this level for 2 years at Baylor, and I told him, I don't know if I've seen more growth in a player, especially at the tight end position. So I'll be honest, I thought Baylor Cupp was a lock to be the number one tight end, but I think it's absolutely great to have that position battle because I think Mason Tharp, Lyle, and Baylor Cupp really do a really good job of complementing each other. They both can go out and be really solid wide receivers in the passing game. Baylor Cupp is a good blocker for the Texas Tech offensive line if they need a guy on either side. And then, I mean, Mason Tharp is 6'9", 270, just an absolute tree with legs out there for the Texas Tech offense. So what stands out to you when it comes to this depth chart? Again, in my opinion, Lyle, before you get into it, nothing crazy shocking outside of the tight end aspect, and that's really not that shocking. It was just health for Tharp. But I like where the Texas Tech offense stands going into the 2023 season.
No, I love it, and getting to go watch practice. My favorite group of all is the tight end group. They've made plays. They made plays the practices that I've been to, and it's been a different one every time. So to me, that's the strongest overall group is those tight ends because to me, any one of those, I've seen every one of those dudes make plays. So, like I said, they can block, they can run, they can catch. And in college football, for you guys, any defensive coordinator in America, that's a problem. Whenever he can line up as a receiver and then go back in and line up on the line or in the backfield, that's a problem. It's tough because it doesn't allow defenses to get the personnel they need out there. So, I mean, those guys are good enough to catch the ball on nickels, and they're big enough to block linebackers. So when you got guys like that, I mean, man, it makes it so tough. If you go look at Lincoln, if you go look at any of those guys that are really doing that, they love those those flex tight ends that can do both. So I think when you got more than one at that you could sub in, rotate in, I wouldn't be surprised if my man Kitley has, the two tight end looks, especially down there in the red zone because those dudes are a matchup problem. They could block. And so, honestly, as a DC, which, I'm not smart enough to be a DC, but I don't know what you do when you got two guys that are 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", that can block and run routes. It makes it tough. Like I said, I think the biggest DB I've ever played against is 6'2", maybe 6'3", and that was very far and few. So I think they create a big matchup problem for those guys, man. And I'm excited to see what that group does, and I'm excited to see the creativity that Kit comes up with those guys because he's going to be creative with a veteran quarterback. He can do a lot of things as a veteran quarterback back there. So for those who understand, each year it gets easier and easier. My freshman year, like I said, it super fast. I didn't know what was going on. Sophomore year slowed down, junior year slowed down, then senior year it super slowed down. So like I said, some of these guys are super duper seniors, and so they've had an opportunity to really watch the game, be a part of the game, start in different situations and scenarios. So I'm definitely excited to see that group and see this offense, man. I think the offense is stacked. And for me, like we always talk about, I think it comes down to, can these receivers get separation? That's been the biggest thing to me. I think that's going to be the difference between winning Big 12 and not winning the Big 12 is can we get separation? Because we know what Taj Brooks, we know we're going to get, we know he could go, we know he can run the ball. We also know what Cam is really good as well. Those guys can move the ball. But the question is, in the Big 12, the type of conference we are, we want to throw the ball. And I think everybody in the conference wants to throw the ball. So can we get separation on those? And I'm kind of excited to see Bradley. We talked about it, but I think the thing that people forget so much, or people don't notice, or people don't think about, it's like when we had Crab. When I played with Crab, there's 3 other receivers with 1,000 yards that year, and it's because there's 3 people on Crab. And so I'm excited to see. And then those next year, when Crab left and those guys, it was their turn to be the man. They didn't quite get to 1,000 yards, and so I'm excited to see what Bradley is. We kind of knew he was the man last year, but this year, everyone knows he's the man. So he's going to have an eye on him every time. So it goes hand in hand. These other guys are going to have to step up, or they're going to continue to double Bradley the whole year, and it's going to be a long year. So that's the thing about receivers, man. You got to be able to bounce off each other. You may get the ball 1 time, you may get the ball 10 times as a receiver. You don't know. It's never in your control. But I'm definitely excited to see how he takes on people game planning for him this year, knowing what he is a year older and seeing how these other guys can help him out, and they'll get an opportunity. So, like I said, it's a lot easier when 3 people or 2 people are covered. The same guy gives you a chance to go one-on-one and win those ones. So I'm excited to see. I think the one that I'm Fungi is the one that I'm looking forward to seeing the most. I know that everyone's on Bradley, and I know everyone likes Miles too. But I'm excited to see him. I think he brings a different dynamic as a receiver. They're all big, but I just think he brings a different dynamic. And like I said, I ran into a guy came to my office the other day. He was Miles Price's coach in high school. And he was just telling me how great of a person he was. And so I'm excited. It fits what Coach McGuire is doing with this culture, how he's running it, what he's doing. And I'm excited to see those guys and see which one of these guys is going to take advantage of people keying on Bradley. And like I said, I think if we can win these one-on-ones with some of these other cats, I think it's going to become a problem. And then we'll get Bradley back on those one-on-one and give him those opportunities to do what he does.
Yeah, I think the guy that I think could have the biggest impact for the Texas Tech wide receiver room, that maybe it won't show up in the stat sheet for him specifically, but in terms of getting other guys open, it's Dre McCray, right? Like he brings an element of speed that you talked about last year at nauseum in terms of the separation, right? They just didn't have a guy last year that could just take the top off of the defense and that safeties had to respect in terms of just absolutely burning past you, right? So I think now with a guy like Dre McCray, who has that 4.2 speed, that low 4.3 speed, whatever it is, right? I think it opens things up for guys like Jerron Bradley, Loic Fouonji. And when it comes to Loic Fouonji, simple and plain, the only issue that is holding him back, there's nothing else, it's health. If he stays healthy, he's going to produce. He's a dog out there. You can see it. He is an NFL caliber type receiver. When I watch him, there's a lot of, I don't know how to describe this other than he feels like a more physically gifted in terms of muscle mass wise.
Yeah.
Eric Izukama, right? Like that's who he looks like. Eric Izukama is more shifty. He's more lengthy, but Loic Fouonji has like the same similar size, but just a little bit more buff, right? The thing with Loic is he's just got to stay healthy. Simple and plain. That's it. And he's going to produce. And I do agree with you in the sense of I think he's a perfect complement opposite of Jerron Bradley, because you're right. Jerron Bradley is going to be the guy that defenses each and every week when they game plan for Texas Tech, they look at him first. And then they go to Taj Brooks, and then they'll figure the rest out. That's just how it's going to be for Texas Tech, right? But when you look at what Texas Tech has at each and every wide receiver position, and then we talked about the tight ends a little earlier, if teams are just going to game plan primarily for Bradley and Brooks, like those are going to be the two people they keen in on. And trust me, I don't blame them. I'd probably do the same thing too if I was a DC. Texas Tech is going to have an ample opportunity to even have a better offense this year because they are just absolutely loaded across the board. But the thing is that's going to be drastically different for the Red Raiders. The quarterback may actually have time to throw the football, right? Like the offensive line is going to be better. You look at it, of the 10 guys on the offensive line right now up there, 9 of them have at least had one college start. You look at the starting offensive line, every one of them has double-digit starts in Power 5 D1 football, right? That cannot go understated. You get a guy like Cole Spencer, a former first-team All-Conference USA guy, Rusty Stats, a guy that has played in the Zach Kittley offense that knows the terminology. And I've said this from the jump, and I think people tend to agree with me, but I'll say it again. The second most important person on the offense, other than the quarterback, is the center. Simple and plain. It's not up for debate, in my opinion, because the quarterback and center have to be on the same page each and every play. And if they're not, disaster happens, period. Right? So Rusty Stats having that ability to know what Zach Kittley is thinking already because of the previous time that he's spent in his offense, I don't think can go understated. So I really like where the Texas Tech offensive line stands right now. But I do agree. I think Loic is a guy definitely to watch. It's funny enough, there's a wide receiver that I want to talk about later that I think could have a standout season for a multitude of reasons for Texas Tech. But for me, when I look at this offense, right, like the guy that I am most interested to see his impact, it's Dre McCray, because I think he can just open things up for guys like Bradley, open things up for Loic across the middle. And we see Jerand Bradley, when he plays at his best, he is really good going across the middle on slants, 7-yard slants, whatever it may be, and just being a big body across the middle, an easy target for Tyler Shuck and the starting quarterback for Texas Tech. And then for his size, he's actually not too bad at making guys miss either. So I really like Jerand Bradley in that scenario, and I think you can use one of those situations where maybe you have Dre on the same side of the field as Bradley, and you just run a 9 route for him right down the seam, and then you just get Bradley tailing right behind him. You clear guys out right there. Boom. You got a little easy, 8-yard gain at worst. And then if Bradley makes the guys miss, maybe he can take it to the house. So that's what I'm looking at. I think, again, you nailed it, Lyle. Like this Texas Tech offense is really deep at every position. And again, I think it comes down to the offensive line, but I think the offensive line will be drastically improved this year for the Red Raiders. All right, let's move to the defense now.
Hey, hold on. One last thing too, and I think that's my biggest question mark too is Dre for me. I've seen him make plays, so I know he has the ability. But like Meek Mill said, there's levels to this. So going every week and kind of coming up from come from Austin Peay, and they play great football there. But he's also a smaller cat, and there's guys that can run at the Big 12. There's guys that are strong that can put their hands on them. So I'm anxious to see how Kittley uses them and what defenses try to do because I play with a lot of fast guys that couldn't get off the ball. And not to say that he can't because I've seen him get off the ball. So I know his ability. But I'm excited to see when you're going Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, TCU. That's different than the schedule that he had. So I'm anxious to see how he holds up for his body with those big tight cats that he's playing. Is Kit going to use him with jet sweeps? Is his body durable enough to use him like that, and how it's going to be done? So I think that's the biggest thing is in those levels. I tell people when people get so mad at me, but it's a difference between D3 and D2. It's a difference between D2 and D1. It's a difference between a mid-conference and a Power 5 conference. It's different. And so I'm excited to see. I think he has the ability, but I'm excited to see how his body holds up, how he is able to go week in and week out. And, I definitely know he has the ability. Tech, they haven't been missing with these recruits and people they're bringing in. So I know he has the ability, but I'm just anxious to see how teams go about seeing them. Do they feel like they could press them or whatever the case may be, man? So that's probably my biggest one on that. Those other guys are all bigger guys. So just excited to see what he does and what Kittley's going to use him and how he's going to use him.
I'm telling you right now, if they press Dre McCray, that is an absolute disaster for defensive coordinators. Because if he wins, you're not going to catch him. But you're
Yeah, but
right in the sense of like, if he doesn't win, they can just body him and out physical him
and putting
potentially
a
right there.
safety over the top though. You put a safety over the
Sure.
top to press him. That's what I'm saying. How is he able to get off? Because if not, you're pressing him, and when he finally gets off, it's a safety over the top. So
But
that's what
that's the thing and again, you know this much better than I do, and it would be my primary question. Like, wouldn't that help the opposite wide receiver though?
It depends on if he gets off. Because really there's a
Okay.
safety on the other side. Everybody's manned up. So
Sure.
everybody still has to win, but it doesn't necessarily help him because we're talking about taking the top over we want him to take the top off. So with that safety with him getting pressed, that defeats what he's
Sure.
what he's there for. I mean, he could catch the little things, but he got brought here because his speed for him to blow the top off. And we're not gonna play teams that come press us up and play 2-man the entire game. But I'm just saying, I'm thinking, to me, that's the biggest thing as a DC. I'm thinking if I get my hands on that man, and like I said, they could do something where they're motion them and you can't get your hands on them.
Yeah.
That changes up to see what Kitley's gonna do with them. But I'm anxious to see just lining up. A dude comes in his face and presses him. Like I went against DBs that were 6'2", and ran a 4.3, 4.4. So I'm excited to see how he reacts. And it's not, he had the big game last year, whoever they played, the Power
Against
5
Alabama.
against Alabama. So he has the ability, but it's also different when you have to do that every single week.
Sure.
It's like those teams that beat a Power 5 team and they play one Power 5 team the entire year. That's cool. That's great. But try playing Texas after you played OU, or after you play Alabama, try playing LSU. It's different on your body. It's different on your mental. It's just different to play those games week in and week out. So I'm anxious to see it. I think he definitely has the ability. Dre, if you're listening, man, you got the juice. I'm just anxious to see how you go about it and what teams do to try to stop that speed.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is too for Dre, and we'll move to the defense here in just a second on your point, because I think you're right, Lyle. Like, it's just different. There's different levels to this college football aspect, and I think people know that, but also I think people tend to think only positively when they see a transfer for their new team, or a new transfer for their favorite team, right? Like,
right.
Oh, what can go wrong? They're always going to be good, when in all actuality, transfers rarely live up to the expectations that you think when they're making a sizable leap, right? But I think with Dre McCray, the interesting thing is this. I think, and again, I am not saying he is going to be this guy. I would suspect, though, Kitley kind of finds a way to use him like Kiki Kuti was used, or Jakeem Grant was used, guys like that. He's not the exact same thing, but finds ways to get them in space and allows Dre to use that trait that he has that not very many people do, which is his 4.2, low 4.3 speed. So it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to see a lot of movement in terms of him, Miles Price, all that kind of stuff. It'll be very interesting to watch. Let's move over to the defense, though. And I don't think there's really any big surprises here either. But let's run through it. At the nose tackle and defensive tackle, you know who's starting there, right? It's Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford, arguably the best duo when it comes to the interior defensive line in the Big 12. I don't know if it's arguably, but we'll just put that tag in front of it for right now.
Hey,
at edge, you've got Miles Cole. Go ahead.
Hey, sorry, brother. Sorry to cut you, but shout out to Tony. Tony, man, I got to meet you, man. Ever since I went to the the
Red Raider
kickoff,
Club luncheon,
man,
right?
I've been a big fan. So, Tone, I got to come out there and meet you, man. You keep doing what you're doing, man. It's just his personality, the way he is. They don't call him the mayor for no reason. So, man, Tone, when I get to the game, man, don't be acting funny, man. I'm gonna come shake your hand.
There you go. He's at the starting D tackle, and we'll actually talk about one of these guys here in a little bit that I think could have a really big impact for Texas Tech behind Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford, because this Texas Tech D-line is pretty deep this year, in my opinion. You got Miles Cole. He's taken over on the edge now, a bigger wingspan than Tyree Wilson, who got picked 7th overall, the second highest drafted Red Raider of all time, alongside the GOAT himself, Donnie Anderson, and then we all know Dave Parks went number 1 overall in 1964. At the will linebacker, you've got Josiah Pierre. At the Mike linebacker, you've got Jacob Rodriguez. If you want to go check out the linebacker preview here on the channel. It's just a couple videos back. Be sure to go check that out. Probably the most interesting name on here, though, from the standpoint of, I think everybody knew he was going to start, Lyle, but just what exactly is he going to be is the Syracuse Orange transfer, Steve Linton. He is projected to start at outside linebacker for the Red Raiders. We'll talk about him here in just a little bit. And then at the star, a guy I'm really excited about in CJ Baskerville. And then elsewhere in the secondary, you got Rashad Williams. You got Rabbit at the safety position. Then you got Tyler Owens. And then you've got at the cornerback position, opposite of Rashad Williams, another or situation. And it is Braylon Lux, the Fresno State transfer, and Malik Dunlap. Now, I will say this, Lyle. This isn't a shot at Braylon Lux. I think if Malik Dunlap was healthy all fall camp, it's not an or situation. But I do think it's a good thing that Texas Tech feels like they have 3 starting caliber DBs. And don't take my word for it. Joey McGuire said yesterday when this was released, we have 3 starting corners, McGuire said. Defensive coordinator Tim DeRuyter doesn't care who's in the game. Lux, Williams, Dunlap, they're all very interchangeable. You're going to see our dime package take a step forward this year against teams that like to spread it out and throw the football, i.e., mostly what the Big 12 is all about. Maybe not back in your day, Lyle. It's changed a little bit. But teams in the Big 12 definitely still like to throw the football. But looking at this defensive depth chart for week 1, Lyle, what stands out most to you for the Red Raiders and Tim DeRuyter's squad?
Hey, definitely Pierre, man. When I was at practice, he walked by me and I felt uncomfortable. That's hard for me to get that way. But that man, the way he's built, you know, saying just a tall, slender, legs like mine, but can a big, strong guy that's fast, that can move. It was awesome to see, and I think that's a credit to Coach DeRuyter and the type of guys that he's bringing in for his defense. That he knows what he wants. He knows what he's doing. Obviously, he's been doing it for a long time, and he keeps on bringing in guys. But I'm definitely excited to see him, and then I'm definitely excited for the safety spot, man. And I tell people this all the time, man. If you got 2 last names, I know you're athletic, and so I know he. I know, I know he could go, man. We know what he could do, but I played with 2 guys in high school, man, that same deal, man. And so it's just kind of like a superstition of mine. Every time I've seen someone, they've been super athletic and even better people. So it's awesome to see. I know we already know what he can do. We've already seen him, but I'm excited. And I think the biggest thing for me is just the depth for us. I think in the past, that's been the biggest thing for us is someone gets hurt and then it goes left quickly. And any of these guys, I don't want to say any. Some of these guys, Jalen, Tony, they be tough to replace. So I don't want to say that, even Rabbit. But we got guys that can fill in and do a wonderful job. And I think that's been the biggest thing, even at the high school level on my team. It's depth. And when you can get depth and teams want to run 100 plays in the Big 12. So these guys have somebody to step in there and do a couple plays. And if someone gets injured, someone gets tired, someone gets a cramp, we got a guy that we can put in there and feel comfortable with and not have to change the scheme for one person coming in. They got guys that can make plays. Like I've seen majority of these backups make great plays when I've been at practice. And I've only been out there like 5 times. And I've seen all these cats make plays, and I think it starts with their size. I think Tech's done a great job of recruiting a size of these cats, man. Like it just looks different than when I played at Tech defensively, size-wise, speed-wise. And shout out to my brothers. I love y'all, but I got to be real. These guys are big and they're fast, and that's also a shout out to their strength and conditioning coaches who do a fantastic job. Make it fun in there. I see the videos all the time that they do. Gains faster. Coach McGuire talked about they're faster, stronger, bigger. And I have to, verify and say that's 100% fact. So I think we're starting to look like a Power 5 defense. I think offensively we've always been had those type cats. We've always got big O linemen. We've always got guys that can catch the ball, run the ball, throw the ball. But I think that Coach McGuire has really done a good job of kind of putting emphasis on that defense to get guys that are the part in the Power Five conference, because these guys are going against O linemen that are 6'6" and above most of the time, 6'6", 3 whatever, 3+ type guys that can move and are athletic. So the only way to counter with that is get guys that are big, fast, strong, and athletic as well. So I think they've done a fantastic job. And I tell everybody when I go to practice, definitely would not have got a scholarship on this squad, receiver wise, or definitely defensive wise, just because of the ability that these kids have and the size and the speed. So shout out to Coach McGuire and his group, and they've done a fantastic job with these cats.
I'm curious, Lyle, because I think some people know, maybe they saw it this past weekend in week 0 of college football. The clock is not stopping after first downs now until the
Yeah.
2-minute mark. How does that, in your opinion, impact defenses in college football that, Texas Tech, again, I agree for the most part, they have pretty solid depth. But how does that impact defenses in terms of how they interchange guys and everything like that? Because you're shortening the game considerably, especially against a team like Texas Tech, where they're getting a ton of first downs and everything like that. How does that potentially impact the Red Raiders defense in terms of depth and maybe allowing guys like Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford to maybe not have to take as many breaks, if that makes sense? Because, again, the clock is running. You're not having to stand out there as long. But how do you think that potentially impacts defenses this year in college football?
Man, I can't lie to you. I really don't think it impacts defenses. I think it helps
Really?
the defense, because offensively we want to go fast. We want to get as many plays as we can to tire them out. And now it changes. Instead of defenses having to do 100 plays, they do 60. So I
Yeah.
think that it affects offensives, especially offenses like Texas Tech. They go 3 and out, then the other team drives all the way down. Well, that's the first quarter. You know what I'm saying? I think we kind of saw it with USC a little bit, and they ended up winning. But if you're a team that goes out there and likes to throw the ball, you 3 and out, they get the ball. If they score 3 and out, they get the ball. Then you get into situations where you're in the second half already and teams are intentionally trying to run out the clock. So I think it makes the game closer, and I think it makes the game harder for offenses. And I think the only time it poses a problem is those triple option type teams that like to run clock. Then it becomes a problem because your guys are out there full half. But overall, I think it really hurts offenses, because you got to be smart about it. Texas Tech is going to go from 100 plays to maybe 60 plays, depending on who they're playing. Now, if they're playing another spread team, that's a little different. But I just don't see any of those aspects that makes it harder on the defense. And so I think offensively, people are just going to have to be smart. You can't go out there trying to score 100 points because of the time and all that going, especially teams that are not supposed to win. For example, playing Wyoming. If Wyoming gets a stop on the first one, if I'm coach, I'm trying to run clock and score so they don't get another opportunity. And so I think it hurts offenses to be productive in your time, especially on teams that you're playing, or you're going to look up and you're going to be out of time.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because truthfully, I didn't think it made that much of an impact in week 0. Like, I noticed it. Don't get me wrong. The game was a little shorter. Um, but I also don't know if the matchups were part of
Right.
that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there wasn't like really good matchups in week 0. I think it's going to be interesting to see what it does, albeit in a small sample size, obviously, in week 1. We'll have to really look back at this like in week 6, right? That's when we're going to look back at this and see. But my initial thought when I saw it was, in terms of the rule change, was I'm going to be taking a lot of unders when it comes to
Mhm.
betting, because I don't know how teams like, and this isn't Texas Tech just pinpointed at them, but I think they're a good example. Texas Tech, as you mentioned, Lyle, they like to run a lot of plays. They like to keep teams on the field. They like the big chunk plays, and they like to score fast, and they like to go fast, all the above when it comes to offense. They want to be able to do everything, right? But an advantage they had was, hey, if we don't sub, you don't sub, right? Like, and part of that was they could go fast and not lose any time, and they could have so many more opportunities because the clock stopped. And now it's like, okay, let's say they were, I forget the number. I had it pulled up yesterday. I wish I could remember, but let's just say for the sake of it, they ran 90 plays on average last year. I don't think that's the number, but let's just say it goes down to, I don't know, 72, 73, 72 to 75 in that range, right? I mean, you're talking probably one scoring drive there potentially, right? Like, and maybe two. And so now you're thinking, okay, how does that help the defense? I think this is great for the defense. And I get why they did it. It's to, have the injury aspect of it and everything like that. I really do get it. And I'm very interested to see how this benefits Texas Tech from the standpoint of, again, talking about the defense here primarily. I think the defense is deeper this year at a lot of key positions. And I think that could drastically impact Texas Tech from the standpoint of you're not having to play as many snaps on the defensive side. So that can keep your guys fresher because you can bring in depth that you trust. And so at the very end of the season, guys like Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford, instead of playing, 100 close to it percentage of the snaps early on in the season, you can be like, hey, guys, go out there, play 70. And then when we really need you later on in the year, go for it, right? And that's what I think could happen with Texas Tech. And I think that I've had a lot of people question my opinion on this, Lyle, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. I think Texas Tech can take a sizable leap defensively this year. And the reason being is, again, first and foremost, they've got players, right? When it comes down to it, we're the podcast that is known for this, Lyle, on Twitter. Listen, coaching is awesome, but it comes down to simple and plain what the players do. Jimmys and the Joes, right? That's simple and plain, right? Yeah. And they've got some Jimmys and they've got some Joes on this defense. Does Texas Tech, right? And so I think that depth is a big part of that. But this rule change also really benefits Texas Tech because I think Texas Tech is built upon, defensively at least, two areas. That defensive line, because, again, how could it not be with Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford?
Yeah.
And then their secondary. The linebackers are going to be okay. It may take them a couple of weeks to get into the flow of it because they're being asked to do new things, really, right? Like Josiah Pierre moving from outside to inside. Jacob Rodriguez, he's going to be your Mike linebacker now. That's a big jump in responsibility, right? And you got guys in the secondary that have been there, done that, and they're old as hell. And that's not a bad thing. I like being old in college football. And so I think when you're built on in the trenches and then you're built in the secondary, you can figure some things out. And now with this new rule, I think Texas Tech could go from being, I believe they were ranked like the 97th defense last year in some metrics. I think they could make a jump. And again, I'm not saying they're going to be Georgia or Alabama defensively. I think people got to get that out of their mind. But if Texas Tech makes a leap, Lyle, from let's just say 97th to in the 60s, we're talking about winning an extra game and a half just right there.
Yeah, I definitely think that. And I think when it comes to defenses, the biggest thing too is I think it's always like, they get those rankings, but it also depends where you go. So a big thing for me, and like I said, I know everyone's probably like, he's an offensive dude, so he keeps saying this, but I think it depends on the offense. And like I said, there's times where I played in games where the defense was on their 3 quarters, 4 quarters. And I've been in games where the defense was out there 2 quarters. And I could tell you, whenever they're out there 4 quarters, their stats were a lot worse than when they're out there for 2 quarters. So I think you have to take that into account when you see that the high speed offense that we run going for it on 4th down, defense is going to be out there more than most teams play. So I think that's a big thing out there too, is just you got to remember your type of offense. There's some defenses that's in the top 20 that only go out there 3 times because teams run triple option. So I think it goes hand in hand, man. I know special teams are going to be good. Shout out to Coach P. But I think it just depends on the offense. How many times are they going to have the defense out there? And it goes hand in hand, just like, our success. How many times are they going to stop them? Depends on how many times we have to score. So I just think that's the biggest thing. And I feel bad for some DCs sometimes, especially in high-power offenses like this, because they go out there, it could be 30 seconds, it could be 10 seconds, it could be a minute, it could be 2 minutes. You never know how long it is with these type of air raid offenses. So they're fun to watch, but to me, they're also expensive. And what I mean by that is you could score in one play. You could also be back on the bench in 10 seconds and the defense back out. So I think it just depends a little bit too on how that offense, how they move the ball, and how long that defense is out there. These guys are good. The backups are good, but like I said, if Tony's in there for 3 quarters, he's still going to be a little tired. He's still going to,
Sure.
be working a little bit. So I think it depends on how we move the ball and how we go as far as managing the clock. I think that depends on all that.
I think too, before we get into special teams real quick, um, I think Texas Tech is going to go for it on fourth down quite a bit more too, because now you don't know how many possessions you're going to get. Before, you could kind of calculate this if you did what you needed to do, right? But now with the clock being really both teams' friend in terms of the opposition aspect of it. Now, granted, I don't think Texas Tech is going to go for it on like 4th and 12 on their own 27, right? But I think they're going to be a little bit more strategic with it and use it to their advantage, much like they did last year, right, with the analytics, because now I think it even becomes more important because you don't know how many possessions you are going to get, especially if the team opposite of you is running the football at a high level.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, for those who don't know, it's a system. So they're smart, but it's also a system that they use to let them know when it's good to go for it on fourth down, when it's
Yep.
not. They're big guys on research, which I respect because I mean we're all stealing from each other. We all do the same thing. We're all learning, but I'm anxious to see. I would love to see their analytics and how their system works and for them to know. But I definitely think you're right on that, seeing it on fourth down. But I could also see it going the other way too because of the amount of time you go for it, you may not get the ball back. So
Yeah.
taking
Fair.
points, doing that stuff, making sure that field position, I think is going to be huge, and I think that's what's going to change the game a little bit. Is just not knowing, like you said, the possession. So 3 points are more important with the clock not stopping, punting the ball and getting them back on that other end. Maybe the difference between the team scoring before half or us being able to hold them after half. So I think, going over the 50, people be on the 45, 4th and 5, people are like, well, I can't make a field goal. It's too close to punt. I'm going to go for it. I think that that changes that mindset. Like, hey, if there's 5 minutes left, punting it, maybe only a 20-yard punt, but punting it may save us from points versus I'm going to go for it because I got time. And I think it's just, I'm anxious to see what people do. I know you gotta take chances, but for me, like I said, as a head coach, I feel like I'm pretty risky, but that puts it on a whole nother level to know, may not get the
Sure.
ball back and give them 45 yards to go score. So I can see it going both ways, and man, I'm just kind of anxious to see, a lot of people smarter than me uh, doing what I love to watch.
Yeah, no, and I think it helps that transitioning to special teams now for Texas Tech, you do have one of the best punters in the country, right? Like that's a big thing to have right now. It makes your decision making a little less, I guess, stressful to a degree when it comes down to it. Because if you are in that no man's land, it's like, well, Austin McNamara 9 times out of 10 is going to pin them within the 20 and put your
Yeah,
defense in a really good spot, right? So you've got that. He's the starting punter for Texas Tech. Gino Garcia, um, well, the former Houston Baptist kicker, now at Texas Tech, he'll take over for Trey Wolf. You got Jackson Knotts back as the long snapper. Kickoff is Reek Burkhart. No surprise there. Holder, Austin McNamara, really on his Pat McAfee type stuff right here is McNamara, if we're being honest. Well, don't do that, Lyle.
sorry.
Don't do that.
Shout out to
Don't do that.
Pat,
Don't
man.
do
Shout out my boy
that.
Pat.
Yeah, he's awesome, but it's
Okay,
delusional. Pat
my
McAfee is
bad.
delusional. Did you see him on game day say that West Virginia was going to beat Penn State in
Yeah,
Happy Valley? Like, I get it. He's kind of joking, but there's part of me that actually genuinely believes he thinks that's going to happen.
he has
Take Penn
to,
State.
man. He
And
has
I
to.
understand that. I understand that, but take Penn State plus the points, people. Hashtag not gambling advice. All right.
Hey, don't do it. West Virginia, man. Yo,
Jeez. I don't know what they have in the water up there. Probably drinking too much moonshine instead of
hey,
actual getting some H2O.
you ain't lying. I do want to say one thing though. Shout out to Coach McGuire, but I think I have the hardest working coffee maker in America. So we may have to put it to the test one day and see who's making the best coffee. But I'm putting my money on Level Land coffee right now. Shout out to you, Coach McQuire. I love you.
Wow. We might have to call out Coach McGuire on that.
But I love you, Coach McGuire. I hope you know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's tough. You know how he feels about his coffee.
Yeah. This is pure right here, brother. I can't, you know what I'm saying? It's pure.
You big Folgers guy? What are you talking here?
Yeah. Black silk, all black with a little honey.
Hashtag not a sponsor, but give me a Celsius. Mostly because I ran out of coffee, if I'm being truly honest about it. It was in the fridge. So at the kickoff return spot, we've got Jordan Brown, who a guy that I will talk about here in just a second about it as an under-the-radar breakout for a lot of reasons. And then on the punt return unit, you've got Miles Price. I think that Tech is in a really good spot when it comes to their kickoff and punt returners. After a few years there, really not last year, but the year prior to that, where it was a guessing game in terms of what was going on for Texas Tech there. But Lyle, want to shift back to, as we go full screen here, to really talking about potential breakouts and standouts for Texas Tech, because one of them for me is Jordan Brown. He was the talk of the camp for Texas Tech in terms of early on. Was really one of the best wide receivers Texas Tech had. Kansas transferred to Texas Tech to follow Emmett Jones. Emmett Jones obviously leaves to Oklahoma. Now you got Juice as the wide receiver coach, and I love that. You can see some tangible changes for these wide receivers already just in camp in terms of how they're used, right? And I think Jordan Brown, albeit I don't think he's going to be anywhere near Texas Tech's best wide receiver, and that's not supposed to be like a dig or anything like that, but you need guys like him in your wide receiver room because he can play every spot you want him to, inside, outside, and he's good on special teams for you. There's a lot of value for guys like him, right? And I think he's a reliable wide receiver, has good hands, can go up and get the ball on the sideline, can also go across the middle, really solid blocker, and obviously good in the punt return and kick return aspect of things too. So when you have a guy like that in your wide receiver room, I think it's invaluable from the standpoint of now you're not asking other guys to do things that they're probably not good at, right? And so now you can put everybody else in this domino effect where it's like, all right, well, Jordan can do this for us. Well, that means JB can do this for us. And we know he's better at this than this. So now it causes a domino effect for guys to be in better positions to succeed on the football field. And I don't think that can go understated in terms of a guy like Jordan Brown and kind of that Swiss Army knife ability he brings.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think more than anything, like you said, it's just when there's someone good behind you, you better show up and you better do your job. So I think that's the biggest thing right there is those guys know it takes one time. And my first year we didn't have any receivers, so I was back up at two spots. So you can make a mistake and you could be okay. But as I got older, man, it was four people behind that would love to jump in there and take your spot. So I think as an athlete's standpoint, man, that makes it tough when you know a guy's making plays in practice. It makes you make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to. Because like I said, it's a dog eat world, man. And I mean, you take somebody's spot, someone doesn't feel bad for you. So I think that's the biggest thing as athletes when you got others to push you. It takes you to another level because you know the importance of handling your assignment, getting open, catching the ball when it comes, and all that good stuff. So I think he's one that can slide in there. Like I said, when people get tired, and like I said, maybe the clock not stopping hurts him. He doesn't get to get in because the clock doesn't stop. But I'm anxious to see him when he gets in there. I know the type of offense we run that he'll definitely get a chance. I know the type of mind Kitley has. He's going to utilize all his players in the best way that they can be used in, and that's what makes him so great. So I'm excited. He's another one. Like I said, he made a lot of plays. I still think breakout for me is either one of those tight ends. I really do. I think I've seen him make play after play after play, and I think and I hope I'm not giving out information to Wyoming, but they made play after play after play, and I'm excited to see their nightmare matchup, man. Them dudes is like 6'9", 6. That's the biggest group out there, and so just to see those guys and be able to rotate in and see, I think you're gonna see a lot more of those tight ends flexed out and letting them a chance to go get the ball because, like I said, as the young folks say, man, they had a lot of head toppers out there, man, making catches. So, like I said, for me, that's what made me the most excited seeing it. I almost ran on the field to try to give him a shoulder bump, man, but them cats too big. So, I'm getting older, so I had to sit on the side, give them a thumbs up. But they made some great catches, and I think they're going to have a breakout year, and I'm excited to see those cats.
And I don't even like, for me, tight end wise, I'm not thinking like even Jason Morrow type stuff. When I think of a tight end in Zach Kitley's offense, I'm thinking a guy that can just be a weapon both in the run game and the pass game. And when obviously I'm talking about the run game, I'm talking about blocking, right? Like, and Baylor Cup, solid blocker. We know Henry Teeter's a good blocker. Guys played fullback for Texas Tech at times, right? Like, that's one of the most underappreciated groups, I think, on the Texas Tech roster. So I'm glad you're giving them some love, Lyle, for sure. Because, again, I've been a big Mason Tharp guy since he came out of high school. I think he's a stud. He's got really good hands. His blocking has improved. It's just really been health for him. And, I mean, when you're 6'9", 275, health is probably going to be an issue when you're playing a game that, it's physical, yeah. Right? And so love Baylor Cup. Obviously, injuries have been a problem for him too, but you get Henry Teeter back. Jaden York is a guy that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of his explosiveness and versatility at the tight end spot as well. So I'm glad you definitely brought them up. The other guy on the offense that I think, I don't know if he's under the radar, call me out on it, but I do think that he will be a standout or have a breakout season. And we've seen it in flashes. He's just hasn't had the opportunity, and he will now this year with the departure of Sir Roderick Thompson, and that's Cameron Valdez. I think Cameron Valdez brings an element to this Texas Tech offense at the running back position that we really haven't seen since Stockton, right? And what I mean by that is Cameron Valdez is bigger than Justin Stockton. Don't get me twisted. Like, I'm not saying they are the exact same player. What I'm saying is Cameron Valdez brings that speed aspect and one-cut ability that Texas Tech really hasn't had in that backfield. Like, when I think Taj Brooks, I think of between the tackles guys. Yes, he can get outside too, but he's not that one-cut and then he's at full speed after two steps guy, right? He's more of a bowling ball guy. Same with Sir Roderick Thompson. They do those things very, very well. Don't get me wrong. But when I think Cameron Valdez, I think you give him the ball, he sees where the lane is. He makes one cut, and he's at full speed after two steps, and you're probably not catching him if you allow him to get there. So that's really what I'm interested to see is how he's used with that quick twitch ability that he has. I think it's going to be a vastly improved run game for Texas Tech, and I think the running backs are going to get more carries because, Lyle, this might be bold. Call me out on it. I don't think it is. I think it's pretty clear cut. I don't think the Texas Tech quarterbacks are going to get 190 carries next year. I just don't. I just don't think that happens. So obviously, if they're going to run the football relatively close to the same amount of times, the running backs are going to get some carries. And I think Taj Brooks is the clear-cut guy. That's not up for debate. He is the starting running back. He is RB1, right? But Cameron Valdez brings a very interesting piece to this offense that I think Texas Tech is going to utilize tremendously, especially between the 20s. Because I think Taj Brooks is going to be used in the red zone because he's kind of that bowling ball type guy, can run people over, good in the pass game as well, probably a better pass blocker as well, right? So you need those kind of guys because you don't want negative plays in the red zone, obviously, right? So I think Cameron Valdez is one of those dudes that really is used in between the 20s, home run type hitter for the Texas Tech Red Raiders out of the backfield. He's just got to stay healthy, and I think he does this year. So he's a guy that maybe not a breakout under the radar sense, but a guy that I think does have a big step coming this year when it comes to potentially breaking out for the Red Raiders. On defense, though, we mentioned Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchins. That's where your defense's bread and butter is going to be made this year, right? Like those two guys. But we need to talk about Amarion Banks, right? The defensive tackle backup for Tony Bradford and the Red Raiders. Texas Tech over the last decade, Lyle, and this isn't supposed to be like a shot taken or anything, but the defensive line depth has been trash. Like, it's just been trash. Like, let's just call it an eye for an eye. Let's just be honest about it. This year, I don't think that's the case. I think that there's quite a few talented guys that haven't had the opportunity to prove themselves, but you can clearly see the talent is there. Now, talent and translating it to actually meaning impactful snaps during a game, that's a big gap. But I'm going to take the talented guy that I've seen the flashes of in practice and hope that it will impact and translate to the game. And I think Banks has that. He's a guy that I think can keep Bradford fresh for the stretch run, really allow Bradford to go 100 miles an hour as often as possible while he's in the game and really get his best out. And when Tony needs a break, hey, I need a snap or two for a break, there's going to be a drop off. Don't get me wrong, from Tony Bradford to Banks. But I don't think it's much of a drop off that we've seen in years past. Yeah. And that's huge for Texas Tech when it comes down to that defensive line, because they've got now 6, 7, maybe 8 guys, depending on how you feel about McAlpine. I like him quite a bit. Just how much is he going to play? I think that there's about 6, 7 guys on that defensive line where it's like, if they're in the game, I don't feel bad about it. Right? Obviously, I want Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford in there because they're your 2 best players on defense probably. But they're human. They'll need breaks. I think Banks is a guy that really allows Tony Bradford to go 100 miles an hour every play he's on the field. And then when you need a break, Banks can come in there and give you that 75, 80% of Tony Bradford. Hey, that's more than enough.
Right. No, I agree. And like I said, we talked about this whole pod today. It's just for me, depth. We finally got depth, and then secondly, like we talked about, man, it's just how they perform. Do we have it on paper? Yeah, we got everything we need on paper. Do we have the coaches we need? Yeah, we got it on paper. But still comes down, just like any level you play at, it still comes down to execution and people performing. And like I said, but it's a good feeling to talk and know that you have the right people in position, know you have the right coaches in position. And I think, like I said, it's been the best it's been in a long time at Texas Tech as far as coaches. We got, 2 of the best coordinators in the nation. We got one of the best head coaches, the best head coach in college football, and as well as the best coordinators in college football. So, like I said, I think it's been a long time since we've been able to say that, and worry about our coaches getting snatched up is a testament to how great they are and the things that they're doing, and then the kids that we have. So I just love to get to be around all the hype that's been here. I don't think Texas Tech has had this much hype in a very long time. I don't think we've been ranked this high ever with predictions, and predictions are predictions, but it's cool when people notice, and people notice the change. People notice the things that's going on. And like I said, man, that's shout out to Coach McGuire, his vision, what he brought in. And like I said, I think he's the first coach to kind of get that buzz since Mike. I think Mike's always had his lingering over Texas Tech. I think this is the first time people are actually like, hey, man, I'm with this. I like this, Coach McGuire. And it's not, oh, man, I miss Leach. I don't really hear people, we always miss the Pirate, rest in peace. But I think this is the first time people are kind of being able to separate that and kind of move on. I think Texas Tech people haven't been able to move on since he left, and Coach McGuire has done such a great job. I think we're finally able to move on, and I think you could tell from the facilities they're building, the people that gave in. Like I said last part, the donors gave over $100 million. So I think people believe in what's going on. They see what's going on. You can feel what's going on, and so I'm just excited to see them on Saturday come and kind of prove what we all know, especially, getting to be involved, which, I appreciate them greatly for that, letting me be involved with the program and come hang out. I see it. So I'm just excited for others to get that opportunity to see not only how hard they're working, but how hard that staff has worked to get them prepared. And so that's all it comes down to, is who's prepared more each week and who has better players. I mean, bottom line. But I think that they've done a great job, and I've seen kids from last year to this year that, I'm like, hey, man, where you come from? They're like, it's me. I'm like, whoa. And so, I kind of feel like, maybe I would have got a chance to keep playing at the next level if these dudes are here getting me strong. I don't know. But we had great strength and conditioning coaches as well. Shout out to those guys, Benny and Aaron, man, awesome dudes that got us right. But I do want to shout them out, though, because like I said, the whole program, from what they eat to the shakes to the – man, it's top of the line. And like I said, his vision coming in here, and I don't think Texas Tech has ever been top notch as far as facilities, as food, as how they do, and he's turning it into that. So it's awesome, and shout out to those guys, man.
Lyle, can you believe the next time we talk to the people, we'll be recapping the Texas Tech football game?
Yeah, it's crazy. Hey, Davis Webb, saw you was going to the game. Fly me up, and I'll meet you there, brother. I don't know if you listen or not, but if you are, you know we're tight. So go. You
Hey,
got
just
that.
tag him in the retweet. Tag him in the
Hey,
retweet.
he already know, but I want to make it publicly. I know he
Oh.
got the quarterback coaching job, so I know his money is long right now. So Davis, fly me up. Tell me you fly me out of Lubbock Airport. Got to be back by Sunday for meetings. Appreciate you and love you, brother. That's it.
Add him on Twitter, people. Just add him on Twitter. That's all we
Hey,
ask.
y'all tweet Davis, man. Tell him to bring me to the game.
There you go. Lyle, where can the people follow you on Twitter, my guy?
Hey, you can find me at CoachLleong, and you can also follow the man that makes all this possible, makes it happen.
At RCMB323 on Twitter. We appreciate all 8,600 of you guys for subscribing to the channel. Let's get to 10K by the end of football season. How's that sound, everybody?
Come on, folks.
How's that sound? Let's get to that 5-digit mark. And again, if you want to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long, we're giving you game previews, 3 keys to the game, film breakdowns, inside knowledge when it comes to how players react and everything. Because, listen, there's nobody else like Lyle when it comes to the Texas Tech podcasting scene. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.